How's it going, everyone? It's Riley's Red Zone, and welcome back to another weekly edition of NFL Picks. We are already cruising through the season, and we're just going to jump right into what this week is. If you're new to the channel, every week we go through who I think will win the game, as well as we've had guest pickers since week 2, and we will have them throughout the rest of the season. So as we take a step back to look at the grand scheme of things, I'm 10-4 last week is how I went on the season, 53-39. So we've been slowly climbing up the ladder, but still obviously looking to get as high as possible on that percentage. Meanwhile, our guest picker last week was Max. He was cruising through fantasy, getting wins, and he ended up getting his first loss in fantasy football, but he is at the top of the guest pick standings at 11-3. So he's still easily in the running in both the fantasy league and the championship crown for who is the best guest picker. And this week, to try to take him on is Zach, who will give his picks as well here to see who ends up with the most correct. We go by winning percentage because not everyone gets the same amount of picks every week. I'll let you know ahead of time, we're not going to have all the crazy fancy graphics this week. I did not have as much time as I have in previous weeks. We'll get back to those soon, but we're still going to have some visuals of what we're doing for the picks this week. So with that being said, let's jump right into what is this week's slate of games, starting with the Thursday night matchup between the Broncos and the Saints. We got a little Sean Payton previous revenge game here. The Broncos are just kind of there, in my opinion, this season. Their defense started showing some flashes, but then they just haven't been able to put it all together all the time. The Saints are really catching the injury bug. Derek Carr now is going to be out, and so they're going with Rattler. Again, that is a huge blow. Not just Derek Carr, but like the collective of their injuries, really. But give me the underdog, and that's where Zach is thinking as well. We're both going with the Saints at home and an underdog pick to start things off this week. I think this will be a close game, but I like the Saints at home in this situation. We'll flip to the Patriots and the Jaguars, next, two very subpar teams this season. I mean, every time I'm thinking, oh, maybe the Jags are back to life. No, they get crushed by Chicago. And the Patriots, I just don't think are a great football team. Drake May looked good this last week. I think now that you can feel comfortable, okay, we can throw him out there and let's just let him develop the rest of the season. I think that their offense does have a lot more potential with him. But for this week, I'm going to take the Jaguars to get their second win of the season. Even though Drake May is a bright spot for New England, Zach is going that direction, so that's a little bit of variance there. Our first split pick of the week, and that means Zach is going with the underdog 2 games in a row. And why not keep it going between the Lions and the Vikings? The Vikings have been pound for pound, you can say it's maybe the best, but for sure top 2 if you go by who's undefeated right now in the National Football League. But I think Detroit is actually on more of a hot streak at the moment. They're really catching on fire. I think that Minnesota hard fought than the previous ones. I actually like Detroit. I'm shocked that they're the underdog. It looked like they opened as the favorite, but now they are technically the underdog pick, which is where both Zach and myself are going to go with this selection. I think the Lions are a top 3 team in the league right now. I think they're scary. They're the best team in the NFC on paper. Aiden Hutchinson is a huge loss. We need to bring that up. That is, maybe he was going to be the defensive player of the year. Your absolute complete pass rush is gone with that, but I think that they can still bring someone in before the deadline, but more so I think the Lions will be fine. That's a huge blow, though, in the long term, but for this week, division game, I'll take the Lions to stun the Vikings. So does Zach. Titans-Bills. The Titans were close last week to get a victory, but just couldn't do it. And the Bills go out and get Amari Cooper. That's a huge get for them. I like that a ton at the trade here. Felt like the trade deadline, really, but there were a lot of trades that we'll talk about. But that one was a good get for Buffalo. I think they just needed that alpha in the room, and I think he can do that and still have the budding stars of Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and all of that crew out there, but I think that it's a nice get for them, and specifically I like Josh Allen with the offense and all that. It's just more safe here to take the Buffalo Bills over the Titans in this matchup. So that's what Zach and I are going to do. We'll take the Bills. Dolphins, Colts. Both have had some banged up quarterbacks. Obviously, Tua a while ago, and I don't know when we'll see him next, but we will see him supposedly. Meanwhile, the Colts are kind of rolling with Flacco, but they're sounding like they're still going to go with Anthony Richardson if he's healthy, which is difficult in my opinion to do. I think that they've been really doing well with Joe Flacco, but if they're going to go with Anthony Richardson, I think that long term, yeah, A-Rich is your guy, but right now Flacco's on a roll. Either way, we're taking our best guess. I'm going to take Indianapolis in this game, even though we don't know the result of what the final say may be at quarterback. Zach's going to go with the Dolphins to finally get back in that W column, which could easily happen for sure. I just am still hesitant on their quarterback situation as well at the moment. Seahawks, Falcons. I think this is the most difficult game to predict in my opinion. I think that these are two teams that will probably be. The Falcons may win the NFC South. They could, but either way, these are two teams I believe will be in wild card contention. They're the top 10 to 12 teams in the league, is what I'm trying to say there. That I don't think they're going to get wins in the postseason, but they should make it there. There's no real reason for this, but give me Seattle in this game. I think that they've been so cold that eventually they're going to get hot, and meanwhile the Falcons have looked really, really solid, and I think they'll come back down to earth a little bit. Both of these teams at times have looked scary this season. I think the Falcons are more consistent, but on this exact week, give me Seattle in an upset pick. Zach's going with the Falcons in that one. How about the Packers and the Texans? That is a heck of a game right there. These are two teams that easily should be in the divisional round of the playoffs. So when we get to that stage, Jordan Love is legit back there with the Packers, really getting it together after the injury. CJ Stroud is phenomenal on the Texans side. Still recovering from that Nico Collins loss, but they steamrolled the Patriots as kind of expected, though. And the Packers also, to me, put up a dominating performance against the Cardinals that really flipped a switch there. I like Green Bay at home here. This is going to be a very fun matchup. Should be tight. I hope it comes down to a one-possession game and that we see either young quarterback get the opportunity to drive down the field and maybe win the game. But either way, this is a great game. We're both taking the Packers in this matchup, though, as favorites at home. Bengals, Browns. I had them a lot more this past year compared to this year because I've been kind of pulling the trigger maybe too easily if I get a gut feeling here. This is my almost upset of the week, which I had a lot of them last year. I'd say that, and it actually does. But this is one where I am going to go conventional wisdom here compared to gut feeling. The Bengals and the Browns. The Bengals, I just don't know what to make of them. They at times look like their former AFC Championship selves with the offense, but their defense has been inconsistent. But the issue here is they're playing Cleveland, who has looked like one of the worst football teams this season. They get Nick Chubb back, which is nice. I'm a huge fan of Nick Chubb, and I think he's actually going to get back to pretty good form. I just think it might take 1 week for him to really. Then they need to transition that offense to just get Nick Chubb the ball, in my opinion. But I said it last week or 2 weeks ago before the Browns lost to the Commanders, and then last week they lost to the Eagles in actually close fashion. If they lost to the Commanders, was going to kind of cool off a little bit, even though I maybe have a little bit more hope than some people do in this Cleveland team. The safe thing to do here is take Cincinnati, but I'm telling you, watch out for this game. This is a potential upset. I can't take it, but I think the Browns could be scary there, but Zach and I are both going with the team from Cincinnati. Eagles, Giants. Speaking of that Eagles team, this is one where I'm going to go with my gut feeling. There's no reason for this. I think the Eagles have actually been disappointing, even though their record is somewhat good. Obviously the controversy this last week of you win 20-16 over Cleveland and your head coach is talking to your fans that you can make what you will of that. But overall, the Eagles are a really well put together team, but they just haven't shown that X factor or even the ability to really put up a ton of points against these poor teams. And the Giants, although they struggle most of the time, I have a just feeling for some reason that I think New York pulls off an upset. This is a split series type of thing. Give me the Giants at home in an underdog selection, which is a little bit odd, but I like New York in this game. Philadelphia is where Zach's going to go. The Eagles, I just need to see kind of a statement win, in my opinion, against a good team long term, but even it would be good if for them if they could take a dominant step in the right direction against a team like New York, who hasn't necessarily been the strongest this season. As we flip to the Raiders and the Rams, it's kind of a battle of mid. I'm not going to lie. The Raiders weren't able to do it against the Steelers as I thought they maybe could, even with the change at quarterback. And the Rams, they've got injuries galore on their offense. Like, what are we doing here? I don't know what to make of this game. I'm just going to take the safe choice, honestly, in Los Angeles here. That's what Zach does as well. I think these are two teams that a win would really change things a little bit for both sides. Otherwise, you're looking at kind of those mid-20s in the rankings of teams. I just don't think either of these squads are that particularly great. But for this week, I'll take Los Angeles. Commanders and the Panthers. I officially, a few weeks ago, was like, okay, these Commanders are legit, but they had to face the wagon that is the Baltimore Ravens last week. So I had to pick against them. I went with Baltimore. This week, when you're playing Carolina, as we talked about with the Browns earlier, upsets can happen at any point. But right now, I don't have a reason to think that the Panthers are going to do so. So I'm just going to go with the Commanders, who have looked like a great team. They get back in the win column this week. Give me Washington in that game for sure. That's where Zach goes as well. I don't have a reason to really pick the Panthers right now above many teams in the National Football League. Now, this is a game that I'm shocked is not in prime time. I mean, rematch of the Super Bowl, and we don't have this in a good win. I mean, it's still a great window, but Chiefs 49ers, and I'm also shocked to see the line has switched, that the Niners are the favorites in this game. And I actually think that they should be, because although it's been a little bit of a struggle season at times this season for San Francisco, I think their roster is still really strong. And the Chiefs, I've mentioned countless times, I'm not concerned what happens in the regular season. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be one of the favorites for the Super Bowl. If they drop a game, who cares, really? And so I think this would be big for the Niners to get a win over a good team. And I think the Chiefs, it doesn't really matter. But with that, I'm going with the Niners. Zach's going with the Chiefs. So I'm saying both teams that are undefeated will be struck down this week. That's my prediction. Both the Vikings and the Chiefs will go down. Jets Steelers. There's a couple of big storylines in this one that make it interesting. The Jets obviously getting Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers' old pal, really is interesting. That's a great move just because we haven't seen maybe MVP Rodgers, but there's sign of his former self, and I think a lot of it is because he just doesn't have the chemistry with his guys on offense yet. And that is something that he develops, and he can be elite when you have a good rapport with his receivers. So getting a guy like Devontae who knows what he's doing back in the building for Aaron Rodgers and company, to me, makes all the difference. I like them a lot offensively. The Steelers are a really good defense, though, and a very good team. It's sounding like they might go with Russell, though, this week, which to me, from the beginning, yeah, I understood Russell being the favorite for the job, and I think at some point we would have seen him anyways, but Fields is getting you wins. I don't know if now would be the time to really make that change, but they're going to. So with that, I'm sticking with the Jets. This is one of my least confident picks of the week, but I'm going with New York to get a bounce back, and the Steelers is where Zach goes with this underdog pick. I am a little shocked that the Jets are favored, but that's just how it's going. So I'm taking New York. He's going Pittsburgh. Let's talk Ravens-Bucks. This is a fun matchup. We got Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. That's one you're going to want to sit down and watch this weekend for sure. With that being said, both of these teams have looked great, and especially Baker. We saw him take the step up last year with the Bucks. Like, he's had a career resurgence. He's looking elite right now. Like, he is looking phenomenal. I really think they're a great team, but I think the Ravens are a pretty unstoppable long-term team, and they're on fire right now. I like Baltimore in this close matchup. They're favored by 3.5. I hope it comes down to the wire. Zach's going with the Bucks. This is exactly the type of game the Bucks would win. In a prime time, Baker just balls out. I could see that happening for sure. So I'm going with Baltimore. He's going with Tampa Bay. I think that could be interesting down the stretch, especially considering what our standings are between him and I going into that game. That could be the splitter, because we are in agreement for this last game, which will be Monday night between the Chargers and the Cardinals, which I don't know if I mentioned on Sunday night. It is actually another Monday night doubleheader for the Ravens and Bucks as well. So that is another double. I'm just going to lay it out there. I don't personally love these doubleheaders on Monday night because I'm trying to watch both games, but then again, more football. We'll take it. But Chargers-Cardinals, the Chargers able to squeak by with a win last week, even with the health issue as well from Jim Harbaugh, which we hope it sounds like he's okay, but obviously a concern. And the Cardinals just couldn't get it done against the Packers. We've seen some great things from the Cardinals at times offensively this year, but I just don't think their defense can really put it together. That being said, I like them to bounce back this week. Kyler carries. Give me Arizona. So does Zach. So we're in agreement on an upset pick there between the Chargers and the Cardinals. We're both going with the Cardinals in that matchup. So with that being the picks for this week, let's quickly do a fantasy league recap of what was last week. So as we take a look here, I managed to win Best Manager last week because I absolutely squeaked out a win. I woke up Monday morning with a 3%, and at one point it was still during the game as low as 1% of winning. I had Breece Hall left, and Andrew had Tyler Bass, the kicker for the Bills. And somehow Tyler Bass only got a total of 3 points as a kicker. I was down by 15 points, but Breece Hall scored 20, and it was enough for me to just squeak by and get a victory. And my bench is so hurt that I scored 96% of my possible points because that's all I got. I played all the healthy dudes I had, and 124 was enough to get the win. Worst manager went to Zach, who is our guest picker this week. He only scored 94 points. Carson putting up 159 points in a win. Impressive right there, defeating Max for the first time. Max took a loss there. And as mentioned earlier, I barely won. I won 124.18 to 123.92. Talk about as close as that. That is incredible. But as we look at the matchups for this week, I'm taking on Charlie. So we got 4-2 versus 5-1. We have Andrew versus Cody. That's an interesting one. Cody has been struggling as of late. He's at 1-5. A chance to maybe get out of the dumps there because there is a reward and punishment for top and bottom in this league. We haven't decided what that's going to be yet, but you don't want to be in the bottom of the standings. That's also where Alex is going to look to avoid between him and Carson this weekend. We also have Matthew and Max in what is a close one. Danny also at 1-5, but he's currently big favorite over Braden at 3-3. And then Nick versus our guest picker, Zach, is expected to be a very close game there. So tight. And so when we look at those standings with those losses coming up, the right side is certainly looking a little bit more the dominant with 2-5-1 teams. Otherwise, we have 3-4-2 in the Virginia division. And we got 3 players at 1-5 trying to avoid that toilet bowl. So it's been an interesting turn of events in the fantasy league. But with that being said, I greatly appreciate you tuning in for this episode of the Weekly Picks. We'll be back with more NFL selections throughout the season. So for now, I'm signing off. Enjoy the football this week.